I planned and gave my sister an amazing baby shower only for it to turn into an occasion to humiliate my fertility issues in front of everyone and boost my sister's ego. What my family didn't know was that I was actually pregnant that time, and they are now mad after finding out I gave birth this week. 2 months ago, my husband, Jason, and I received the most beautiful surprise. We found out that we're expecting a baby. This was completely unexpected and felt like a true blessing from God. You see, for the past 2 years, we've had a tough journey trying to start a family. We faced a lot of challenges when it came to getting pregnant. At one point, I did get pregnant, but sadly, I had a miscarriage. That experience was deeply heartbreaking and left both Jason and me feeling devastated. It took a long time for us to even begin to heal from the trauma of that loss. After the miscarriage, we decided to stop trying actively for a baby. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the right thing for our mental health. We decided to leave things in the hands of the universe and just focus on other aspects of our lives. Little did we know, the universe had its own timing in store for us. 2 months ago, I woke up feeling a bit off. I felt heavier than usual and the nausea hit me pretty hard. It was like the classic morning sickness you always hear about. At first, I thought it might just be a random bug or something I ate, but then, a tiny thought crossed my mind. Could I be pregnant? I decided to take a pregnancy test just to be sure. When I saw that positive result, I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe my eyes. Jason and I were overwhelmed with joy. We were smiling, crying, and just soaking in the news. It's hard to describe the feeling, but we've been on cloud 9 ever since. We just can't stop talking about it and dreaming about the future. It's like this little miracle has brought a whole new light into our lives. Even though we're so excited, we've decided to keep the news just between the two of us for now. Since it's still very early in the pregnancy, only 2 months, we want to be cautious. We've been through so much in the past, and we want to make sure everything is going well before sharing the news with everyone else. As for family, Jason isn't in contact with his side of the family because they've always been really toxic. He made the decision to cut ties with them for his own peace of mind, and I fully support him in that. So the only family we really have is mine. While my family is supportive and loving, we're still holding off on telling them for now. We just don't want to give them the happy news too soon, especially if something were to go wrong later. Another reason I've been holding off on announcing my pregnancy is because this week was my younger sister Bonnie's baby shower. Bonnie is also pregnant with her first child, and she's been absolutely over the moon about becoming a mom. She's been so excited, counting down the days and planning every little thing with such joy. It's been wonderful to see her so happy, and it's clear that this is such a special time for her. My parents are thrilled too, since this is going to be their very first grandchild. Everyone has been focused on Bonnie's pregnancy, and honestly, I didn't want to take away any of the spotlight from her big moment. Bonnie can be a little sensitive about attention, and I understand that completely. She's always liked having her moments celebrated without distractions, and this baby shower was one of those moments. I know how important this was to her, and I didn't want to do anything that might shift the focus or make her feel like her special day was overshadowed. After all, this week was all about her, and I wanted to respect that. For the baby shower, Bonnie put her trust in me to plan the entire event. She gave me the responsibility of making sure everything was perfect and aligned with her vision. She sent me countless Pinterest boards, photos and ideas for the themes and decorations she wanted. It was clear she had a dream for her baby shower, and I was determined to bring it to life for her. Planning it was a big task. It took a lot of time, effort, and energy, but I didn't mind. I wanted to give my sister a beautiful and memorable celebration that she would cherish forever. When the big day arrived, I was at the venue early, making sure everything was set up perfectly. I was running around double-checking the decorations, arranging the tables and ensuring that every little detail was just right. It was exhausting, but I didn't mind because I knew how much this day meant to her. My main goal was to make sure she walked into that venue and felt like it was everything she had ever dreamed of. When my sister arrived at the venue, her reaction made all the hard work feel so worth it. She was completely taken aback by how everything looked. It was exactly like the Pinterest photos she'd shared with me. She kept gushing about how perfect everything was, and her excitement was infectious. Seeing her so happy made me feel proud of what I had pulled together for her special day. As the day went on, guests started arriving one by one and the atmosphere became livelier. I stayed busy, helping everyone settle in and organizing their gifts off to the side so we could have a dedicated time to open them later. My mom showed up shortly after and pulled me aside to thank me. She told me how much she appreciated the effort I had put into making this day amazing for Bonnie. Hearing that from her was heartwarming, and I felt grateful that my hard work was being recognized by the people who mattered most. I had also planned a few fun baby shower games, and soon enough everyone was laughing and having a great time. Everything was going smoothly and the focus was entirely on Bonnie, just as I had wanted. Then, Claudia arrived. Claudia's my sister's best friend, and they've been close ever since they were kids. While Bonnie absolutely adores her, the truth is Claudia and I have never really gotten along. And from my perspective, Claudia is a drama queen. She's the type of person who always needs to have the last word in an argument. She's loud when she argues, insists that she's always right, and has a flair for the dramatic. Over time, I've just learned to avoid her when I can because dealing with her energy feels exhausting. Since this was my sister's baby shower, I really didn't have much of a choice but to invite Claudia. First thing out of her mouth upon entering the party was a snide comment about how tacky the theme was and how she could have done a much better job planning the shower. I pursed my lips trying to keep my composure and glanced at my sister to see her reaction. To my surprise, Bonnie just brushed off Claudia's comments, smiling and saying how happy she was to see her. Unfortunately, Claudia didn't just stop there. Throughout the afternoon, she kept making passive-aggressive comments to me, even in front of other guests. Every chance she got, she would remark how my planning for the baby shower wasn't up to the mark. It was frustrating to say the least, especially because I had poured my heart and soul into making this day perfect for my sister. Still, I held my tongue for Bonnie's sake. But Claudia wasn't done pushing my buttons. At one point she walked up to me and made a snarky comment about the catering, suggesting I should have hired a more expensive caterer instead of someone she assumed I found off the streets. Her tone was so condescending that I couldn't help but feel taken aback. I calmly pointed out that the caterer I had chosen was actually very well known and came highly recommended. Plus, everyone at the party seemed to love the food, so I didn't understand why she felt the need to complain. And then came the most absurd part. She argued that the food was too oily for her taste, even as she was still chewing on it. That's when I lost my patience. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Well, if you think it's so oily and bad, maybe you should stop eating it." Then I pointed out rather loudly that I had already noticed her finish 2 full plates and now she was on her 3rd plate. So if the food was not up to the mark, why was she still eating? That shut her up and she walked away red in the face. Later, it was time for us to open Bonnie's gifts. We all gathered around excited to see what everyone had brought for her and the baby. The atmosphere felt warm again as we admired each thoughtful gift. Guests were gushing over the adorable baby items, and Bonnie looked so happy, soaking in all the love and attention. For a moment, it felt like the tension from earlier had melted away. But then Claudia struck again and she loudly clinked her glass, drawing everyone's attention, and stood up to announce that she wanted to make a speech. I immediately tensed up, dreading what she might say. At first her words seemed innocent enough. She talked about how happy she was for Barney, how excited she was to meet the baby, and how much she cherished their friendship. But then, without missing a beat, she added, "I just wish I had been the one to throw this baby shower instead of your childless sister." I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman to call me childless, as if that was an insult. Also, why wouldn't I plan my own sister's baby shower? I rolled my eyes at her trying to stay calm, but then she took it even further. Claudia smirked and said, "But you know what, Bonnie? I get why you let your sister organize all this. I mean, this is probably the closest she'll ever get to having a baby shower herself, what with her fertility issues and all." Time seemed to freeze. I stared at her, stunned, as she let out a giggle and turned her gaze towards me, clearly pleased with herself. The room went completely silent and I could feel the weight of awkward glances being exchanged around me. My cheeks burned with humiliation and anger. I couldn't stay silent. I asked Claudia directly, "What do you mean by fertility issues?" She feigned surprise, putting on an act of innocence as she replied, "Oh, I didn't know this was a secret. Was I not supposed to say anything? I mean, Bonnie told me all about how you can't have a baby and how you even had a miscarriage. I just assumed everyone else already knew." Her voice stripped with fakeness and it was clear to me, and probably everyone else in the room, that she knew exactly what she was doing. She was deliberately humiliating me, airing one of the most painful and personal parts of my life in front of a room full of people. I stood up from my seat, trembling with anger and disbelief. I looked at Bonnie, hoping, expecting that my sister would say something in my defense. After all, she had to know how cruel and inappropriate Claudia's words were. But to my shock and disappointment, Bonnie avoided my gaze entirely. She didn't say a word. Thankfully, my mom stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. She berated Claudia, telling her she shouldn't be saying such silly things, especially when she was drunk. But then, instead of fully supporting me, she turned to me and said, "Let it go. It's not a big deal." I was mortified. My deeply personal struggles had just been thrown out into the open in the most callous way possible, and the person I thought would have my back, my own sister, had stayed silent. Is this what they thought of me behind my back? I felt hurt, angry and completely alone in that moment. Without wasting another second, I turned to gather my fangs. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there. As I grabbed my purse and jacket, I announced loudly that I wasn't going to stay there any longer and that the baby shower could go on without me. I couldn't stand to be in that room surrounded by people who had just witnessed my humiliation, with Claudia sitting there smugly after what she'd done. Both Bonnie and my mom immediately tried to stop me. My mom tried to convince me that it wasn't at all necessary to leave. Bonnie, on the other hand, came running after me, clearly flustered, and she begged me to stay, saying that I was blowing things out of proportion and making a scene over something that was said for fun. She continued to defend Claudia, saying her best friend didn't really mean what she had said. Claudia was just being Claudia, she insisted, trying to brush it off like it was some harmless joke. She begged me not to leave, saying I was making things awkward for everyone. I stopped in my tracks and looked at her, trying to keep my voice steady. Fine, I told her. I'll stay, but only if you kick Claudia out. I'm not going to sit in the same room as that woman after what she just said to me. But instead of agreeing, Bonnie hesitated. She looked torn and then she started to argue back. I can't do that, she said, almost defensively. Claudia is important to me. She's my best friend. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Even after the way she just talked to me? I asked, my voice rising. Even after everything she just said to humiliate me in front of everyone? Bonnie shrugged as if it was nothing. Then she said something I'll never forget. It's not like Claudia lied, though, she said. Her tone matter of fact. She only said the truth. You do have fertility issues. You did have a miscarriage. You can't have children. Why are you so upset? It's not like what she said wasn't true. I stared at her, feeling like the ground had just been pulled out from under me. Are you serious? I managed to ask. Bonnie didn't even flinch. She just looked at me and said, you need to stop feeling so insecure about it and just embrace it. It's your reality. Her words cut deeper than anything Claudia had said. This wasn't just an attack from her best friend anymore. This was my own sister dismissing my pain, invalidating the struggles I'd been through and reducing it all to something I was supposed to accept without question. In that moment I realized just how little she truly understood me and how little she cared about how much this had hurt me. I just shook my head at her in disappointment. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to yell out the words that would shut her and Claudia up for good. I'm pregnant. I'm having a baby. But I held back. This wasn't how I wanted anyone to find out about my pregnancy, especially not in the middle of all this chaos. No, I didn't want these people to learn about my baby. Not like this. Instead, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly, though my voice was cold. You and I are done, I told her, my words heavy with finality. I reminded her of everything I had done for her leading up to this day, how I had moved heaven and earth to give her the baby shower of her dreams, even at the expense of my own energy and emotions. I reminded her how much effort I had poured into making her happy, only for her to turn around and let her best friend humiliate me in front of everyone. And not only had she allowed it, but she had also defended Claudia's behavior instead of standing by me. Before she could respond, I added one last thing. I paid for half of the caterer's bill, but as far as I'm concerned, you're on the hook for the rest. I'm not going to pay another penny for this shower. Bonnie's eyes widened in shock. She tried to argue, her voice rising as she called me unfair and said I couldn't just leave her with the remaining cast, but I didn't care anymore. I didn't let her finish. I simply turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there. Since that day, my mother has been giving me an earful about how I was too cruel to my sister. She scolded me countless times, telling me that I should have handled things differently. She also told me how after the shower, Bonnie didn't have enough money to cover the rest of the catering bill and had to dip into her savings to pay it. Apparently that left my mom feeling guilty and now she's been pressuring me to make amends with Bonnie and even pay her back for the remaining cost of the caterer. But every time my mom brings it up, I feel the same frustration and anger bubbling to the surface. I can't get over how Bonnie allowed Claudia to humiliate me in front of everyone, how she dismissed my pain, and how she expected me to just brush it all aside. Why should I forgive her when she doesn't even seem sorry? Why should I pay her back when she's the one who failed me as a sister? AITA? Update 1. Just to clarify, my sister wanted me to not only organize but also pay for the entire baby shower. She told me that as her older sibling, it was my responsibility to pay for it and show her future baby love and support. I had already paid half of the amount to the caterer and I planned to pay the rest at the event itself. However, after everything that happened, I didn't want to spend another penny on her. I'm glad she had no choice but to pay me back. And no, I'm not going to pay her back for that. Why should I? It was her baby shower after all. In fact, Bonnie is lucky I'm not asking her to pay me back for everything I've already spent on her. If I did, she'd probably end up broke. Anyway, since the baby shower, Bonnie and my mom have been trying to guilt-trip me into talking to them, but I've been avoiding their calls. In fact, when my husband, Jason, found out about everything that had happened at the baby shower, he was absolutely furious. He couldn't believe how I'd been treated, not just by Claudia, but also by my own sister and mother. He was livid, and he wasn't about to sit idly by while someone disrespected me so openly. So, he found Claudia on Instagram and sent her a direct message, letting her know exactly what he thought of her behavior. He told her that if she had so much to say about a woman's fertility struggles, especially without any proof, then he and I would have no problem suing her for defamation. He made it clear that he wasn't like my mother or my sister, who would just stand by silently while she humiliated me. He didn't stop there. He told her in no uncertain terms that if she had anything else to say about me, he would gladly meet her face to face to hear it. Apparently, his message must have shaken Claudia to her core. She wasn't expecting to be confronted in such a blunt and no-nonsense way, probably. She replied back with an apology, though it felt half-hearted. She did try to justify her actions, claiming that she didn't remember much of what happened at the baby shower because she had been very drunk. It was a weak excuse and Jason and I both knew it. Still, she did apologize in the end and that is what I wanted. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update and so much has changed since then. After everything that happened at the baby shower, I've officially cut ties with my family. You see, for weeks after the baby shower, Bonnie and my mother just wouldn't let the situation rest. I had made it clear to both of them that I needed a genuine apology for everything they put me through. My mother did apologize, but it felt half-hearted. Even as she apologized, she couldn't resist telling me that part of the blame was on me for walking out and humiliating Bonnie in front of everyone. Her words stung as if my pain and humiliation didn't matter, as if I was somehow responsible for the disrespect I endured. Bonnie, on the other hand, flat out refused to apologize. She doubled down on her stance, insisting that she wasn't responsible for what her best friend Claudia had said to me. "It's none of my business," she kept saying, like it was somehow okay to sit by and let her best friend attack me without stepping in. That alone was heartbreaking, but then she took it even further. Bonnie started demanding money from me, saying I needed to pay her back for the remaining catering costs she had to cover after I refused to pay the rest. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying she needed the money for her baby. I stood my ground and refused to give her a single penny. I had already paid my share and after everything that happened, I wasn't about to cave into her manipulative tactics. When I refused, she hit me with a threat that stunned me. She told me that unless I gave her the money, she wouldn't allow me to see her baby once it was born. At that moment, something inside me just clicked. I realized how toxic and manipulative she had become, or maybe always was. I calmly told her that I was okay with that. I didn't want to meet her or her child anyway. After that, Bonnie escalated things even more. She started posting cryptic messages on her Instagram stories, clearly directed at me. One story read, "Family sometimes stabs you in the back," while another said something like, "Cheap people don't deserve sympathy." It was just so obvious who she was talking about and honestly, it made me feel like she was dragging this whole situation out unnecessarily. All I wanted was an apology and a chance to move on, but Bonnie seemed determined to turn this into some dramatic spectacle. Her posts, her words and her attitude made it clear that she wasn't interested in fixing things. She just wanted to make me look like the villain. This is why I cut her off and stopped all communication with her. Then, yesterday, after days of silence, Bonnie reached out to me completely out of the blue. She was messaging me as if nothing had ever occurred between us. She asked if I would be open to babysitting her child once she gave birth and had to return to work. She explained that she and her husband had been discussing it, and with their budget, they wouldn't be able to afford a nanny. On top of that, our mother was refusing to help, so Bonnie was hoping I'd step in. She even wrote that she was willing to let bygones be bygones if I agreed to help and babysit her kid. She didn't apologize for anything that happened. No mention of the way she and Claudia had treated me, but somehow, she thought I'd just forget everything and offer to take care of her child for the sake of family. I couldn't believe it. After everything she had said and done, after how she had treated me, now she expected me to step in as some sort of caretaker for her child. It was beyond absurd. I replied simply with one word, no. Bonnie didn't take that well. Immediately she started sending me a barrage of messages calling me selfish for not agreeing to help her. She accused me of being sad and lonely, saying that I should be grateful for the opportunity to look after her baby as if I owed it to her. Keep in mind that Bonnie still doesn't know that I'm pregnant. I haven't told anyone yet, not even my own family, and I feel like they all still don't deserve to know anything. My mother, as usual, couldn't stay out of it and decided to get involved, also. She called me today telling me that I needed to stop holding a grudge against Bonnie for what Claudia had said that day. She went on and on about how we were still sisters and that Bonnie was my family, so I should agree to look after her child even if I didn't want to. She argued that by doing so, I would be helping Bonnie and her husband out a lot. At this point, I couldn't take it anymore. I was so fed up with her trying to guilt-trip me into doing things I didn't want to do. I told her flat out that I was sick of her and Bonnie always pushing my boundaries, forcing me into situations where I had no say. They seemed to think that I was obligated to just give in every time and I wasn't going to take it anymore. I told her that she should step up and help Bonnie herself if she was so concerned instead of trying to drag me into this. I made it clear that I was under no obligation to babysit Bonnie's child, especially after everything that had happened. But my mother tried to argue more, trying to make me feel guilty as she always does. I could feel my patience running out and I knew I couldn't handle it anymore, so I just snapped. I told her I needed a permanent break from her and Bonnie and that I couldn't deal with their constant pressure. I ended the call right then and there, and this time, I actually blocked both of them. I've had enough of the emotional manipulation and the way they treated me like I'm some sort of a doormat. They've crossed way too many lives, and I'm done. My dad, on the other hand, has kept his distance from all of this. He hasn't really shown much support, and honestly, I'm not in the mood to talk to him either. At this point, I just want peace. I don't want to hear from them anymore. I'm so exhausted from all the drama. I need time away from it all to focus on myself. I just hope, for my own sanity, that after this, they'll leave me alone. I don't want to deal with any more